If you come from an immigrant family, you know how important it is for families to keep their native tongue generation through generation. I come from an immigrant family. My sisters and I were born here in the United States, but my parents migrated here from Mexico when they were young. Many would say our first language is Spanish, and although it is the first language we started speaking, we do not consider it our primary language. I do not believe that speaking a language first makes it your first language. I consider the language we learn in depth rather than just speak it our primary language, in which case, for me, would be English. Our home was primarily In our home, we primarily spoke Spanish, but we were introduced to English as well. I started school in a bilingual pre-K, so I picked up on both languages, but once I started elementary school, I was enrolled in all English classes. Although I only had English classes in school, my parents only wanted us to speak Spanish at home, so my sisters and I will not forget our native tongue. A lot of people lose their native tongue as generations grow up in the United States, but I think it is very important that we don't, and through bilingual education, it is possible to preserve it. Bilingual education has had a lot of controversy over the years. When it was first introduced in the 1960s, it was a small 7.5 million federal program for Mexican American children. The idea of bilingual education was to teach students Spanish for a short period of time until they were up to speed with the students of their age outside of the bilingual program. Nevertheless, in the 1970s, bilingual education expanded to include other language minorities, and it was no longer just Spanish. In 1974, the Equal Educational Opportunity Act, which prohibits the denial of equal educational opportunity based on race, color, sex, or national origin, was signed into law in an effort to ensure that children whose first language was not English had equal access to education, and to help them become fluent in the dominant language of business, government, and the public education system. Although it would seem like bilingual education would be seen as a positive thing for many, some parents of the students put in the program do not see it that way. According to the National Association for Bilingual Education, many parents are not committed to having the schools maintain the mother tongue if it's at the expense of gaining a sound education and the English language skills needed for obtaining jobs or pursuing higher education. Families migrated to the United States to live the American dream, which involved learning the language. Therefore, some families got the impression that by putting their children in bilingual classes, they would not learn English. Many think that in bilingual classes, the focus is taken off of English, therefore it takes their children longer to learn. Although they make a good point, the main language in the United States is in fact English, but they fail to remember that America is considered a melting pot, meaning it is made up of many races and ethnicities. Although English is a common language, America is in fact made up of many languages, so being bilingual is actually very beneficial. There is, however, an annual parental waiver to exempt children from being in bilingual programs if they wished. For kids that just came to the United States, however, bilingual classes are very beneficial to them. It has been proven that learning a second language is easier for students. The basic understanding of how language works helps make learning a new language a lot easier. Those that are against bilingual education, however, claim that there is little evidence that it is superior to all English programs. And yes, it may not be superior, but it is definitely beneficial for students. Throwing students that have known one language all their lives into a classroom that speaks a completely different language is like making a fish live out of water. It could potentially really hurt them. Sure, there are a few students that can survive immersion classes, but what about those that can't? Should every student have the opportunity to succeed? Wouldn't you want your children to have the opportunity and not feel like they are dumb because they do not understand what is going on or are not getting things as fast as their English-speaking classmates? I had many friends in elementary school that were in bilingual classes, and they really enjoyed it. They said that the best part of it was that they were able to ask questions in Spanish when they were lost, which made the learning process a little easier for them. Those against bilingual education would see that as enabling, but it was actually encouraging students to not be ashamed or to be embarrassed to ask questions when they are not fluent in English. No one should be ashamed of where they came from, especially in America when it is one of the most diverse countries in the world. Not all parents and students see the benefits of being part of a bilingual program, but not only does bilingual education help students learn the dominant language, but it also helps them keep their heritage. And it also has an economic advantage. Some jobs pay higher salaries to their bilingual employees, which ultimately will provide a better life for people that take time to learn more than one language. Part of the American dream many immigrants are chasing is to provide their children with better opportunities, which being bilingual can better those opportunities, especially if some employers are willing to pay more to their employees with bilingual fluency and literacy. In conclusion, according to the National Latino Children Institute, can be very beneficial. All good teaching uses the learning tools students already have as the basis for building new skills and acquiring new knowledge. Most children enter school with basic language skills in English or other languages already in place. It is up to qualified school teachers to use those skills to help them develop academic importance they need to succeed in life. Children learn more effectively if they learn English through the use of their native language, which provides a contextual basis for learning and allows them to keep pace with their peer groups while acquiring the language they will need to learn in order to interact effectively in today's society. Therefore, throwing students into an environment in which they do not speak the language can potentially set them up to fail. So why take the chance? Not just let them learn. Why not just let them learn in an environment in which they feel comfortable participating in?